Welcome back. We have resolved those technical issues, and Stephen Jones and Josh Frydenberg are now with me this afternoon. We did begin the show, of course, discussing whether or not the carbon tax had any impact on the Labor defeat in New South Wales over the weekend. Josh, I was saying, don't you think it's a bit of a long bow to draw to blame the carbon tax for Labor's defeat?
Well, good afternoon, Ashleigh. I mean, the first thing to recognise is this is an emphatic win for Barry O'Farrell and his team, reflecting their very strong performance in the election. It's also an endorsement of core Liberal values and our commitment to reducing the cost of living, and that's where the carbon tax comes in. But it's also a repudiation of the spin and the backroom deals that we've seen in the Labor Party in New South Wales over many, many years, basically using the premiership as a revolving door, and we know at the federal level they're not immune, the way they knifed Kevin Rudd. So, I mean, I do believe there are lessons for the federal sphere, and I do believe that the carbon tax, which Barry O'Farrell made a major issue of during his state election, that has ramifications for Julia Gillard, because it does lift the cost of living on families who are already struggling with higher energy bills and other bills, and electricity prices are estimated in New South Wales alone to go up at least $300 per family, per household, per year. And that's pretty significant. So I think Tony Abbott has reason to look at this as a very positive victory.
Stephen, as Josh mentioned, Barry O'Farrell did campaign against the carbon tax quite strongly. If it did play into the result, then federal Labor's got a lot to worry about, doesn't it?
Look, I agree with Josh on two things and strongly disagree with him on the third. First, a great win for Barry O'Farrell. Can't take anything away from him, so congratulations to him and his team. Secondly, it was a repudiation of the style of politics that we've seen in New South Wales for the last 4 years, and Australian Labor and New South Wales Labor in particular needs to take its medicine, needs to look at what has gone on in New South Wales and ensure that we do not repeat those mistakes. Whether it had anything to do with carbon tax, well, you'd have thought in my area, the Illawarra, which was one of the two areas that Barry O'Farrell came down and campaigned on it, there was absolutely no evidence at all that this was a vote on carbon tax. It was a vote on 16 years, a long-term Labor government, and a government which, quite frankly, over the last 4 years showed a lot of examples how it was failing to govern itself.
Stephen, you said that it was a repudiation of the way Labor's been run in New South Wales, but haven't a lot of those people behind the scenes now just moved straight to Canberra and are running the show there?
What it was a repudiation of was, firstly, and where things started to go off track, was when Michael Costa and those around him decided they wanted to sell off the state's electricity assets in the teeth of opposition from the party, the rank and file members and those loyal Labor voters who'd backed Labor for 12 years to that point in time. That's where we started the downhill turn, and when people started looking at the Labor government and couldn't see the Labor in New South Wales Labor, then we were really in for a shellacking at the polls. And the lesson for us in Labor in New South Wales is to ensure that we go back to our party faithful, and we re-establish connection with those Labor voters who are looking at us to ensure that there is real leadership and to ensure that there is a party out there in the Australian political landscape that has the interests of ordinary working people in hand.
Josh?
See, Ashleigh, I just disagree with that, because if you look at who are the key ministers in the Gillard government, whether it's Mark Arbib or Tony Burke or Chris Bowen, these guys have been deeply involved in New South Wales Labor-style politics, and they brought that Sussex Street-style politics to the federal parliament. And throw in Paul Howes there, and you've got the team that basically brought an end to Kevin Rudd's prime ministership. So I think Julia Gillard, try as she might to distance herself from the New South Wales election result, I think it's going to be a painful one for her, and I think the ramifications could be long-lasting.
Stephen,
Josh,
I just want to move on a little bit from that issue. I just want to look at another aspect of this, Stephen, which is what is the future for Labor in New South Wales now? Do you think John Robertson is the right man to lead the Labor opposition? Do you think Christina Keneally may one day have a future in Canberra?
I think people, whether they voted Labor or not in Saturday's election, look at Christina Keneally's performance over that campaign and say, you've got to hand it to her. She turned up day after day. She was getting a pounding, but she kept on showing up and taking the message out there to people. So she's done probably one of the toughest jobs in Australian politics, taking Labor to the 2011 election. What she does over the next 3 to 4 years are entirely in her hands. The matter of the next New South Wales Labor leader is a matter for the New South Wales caucus, and I don't think they need people from me commentating from the sidelines on that. But what I do know is this, that whoever the next Labor leader in New South Wales is he or she has to look and sound like a traditional Labor leader. That means talking about, thinking about and espousing traditional Labor values. The voters of New South Wales have got to see Labor as Labor representatives and not the representatives of property developers
so
or coal mining,
or
the coal mining lobby, and look after the interests of ordinary working people.
Okay, Josh, I want to get your analysis on how the Independents and the Greens went in the election on the weekend. We saw a handful of Independents lose their seats, including a couple of them who were standing in seats that fall into the federal electorates of Rob Oakeshott and Tony Windsor. Should we read too much into that?
Look, I think the voters chose the National Party, and all credit due to the campaign that the National Party ran in those seats to win them off the Independents. And the reason why the voters went with the Nationals is because what you see is what you get. You know who you're voting for, their positions and their policies. Unfortunately, with the Independents who have decided to side with Labor, that's not really a reflection of the people that elected them and their values and their policy preferences. And I think there is quite a significant lesson there, and hopefully, Rod Oakeshott and Tony Windsor are taking that to heart.
Stephen, do you agree that the Independents brand has been damaged?
What I think happens is when there's a big swing on, there's a lot of people who get knocked out of the way, and that's clearly what's happened here in New South Wales. We've seen it at the federal level before. We've seen it at state elections before. So I don't think there are any great national lessons. It's Josh's job to go out there today, as it is the job of many in his party to go out there today and say this is the harbinger of things to come. I don't think that's the case. I actually pay the voters in those seats a lot more credit. They know the difference between a state and a federal election.
Okay, let's just look at why you both are actually in Canberra. We saw that members of the House of Reps were called back this morning for a special session to debate changes to the NBN. Josh, what's the point in dragging out this debate for so long? We saw the Senate sitting for a few days. These changes are going to be passed, won't they, with the support of the Independents?
Look, let's put this in context. The NBN is the largest public works initiative ever undertaken in Australia's history. It's over $50 billion. And then in the death of night last week, Stephen Conroy introduced nearly 30 pages of complex amendments and just expected the Parliament to rubber stamp them. And we're saying, actually, we're not just going to rubber stamp your complex amendments, and more to the point, they should be properly debated. You should bring them back when Parliament comes back in its next session, and not just bring us all here for a quick session of yes, no, and suddenly you have dramatically changed your NBN policy. And, the fact of the matter is, with the NBN, not only has it been, or will it be, a waste of taxpayers' money, but it's also been an abuse of process. The NBN is not going to be subject to scrutiny from under FOI. It's not going to be subject to scrutiny by Parliament through the Public Works Committee. It's not going to be subject to scrutiny by Infrastructure Australia. It's not going to be subject to scrutiny by the Productivity Commission. And so what we're saying here is, particularly as it applies to the ACCC and this bill now before the Parliament, it should be subject to scrutiny. We need to hold the government to account and the NBN Co to account on the bundling of services, on wholesale pricing, on a whole range of other issues that are contained in this legislation that we're looking at the moment.
Okay,
but instead, this government is not subjecting it to scrutiny, Ashleigh.
Stephen, there's a lot to answer there. Why were you trying to rush these changes through? Is that what was going on there? We saw the amendments were tabled pretty late.
I'll get to that in a moment, but like his boss Tony Abbott and his Treasury spokesman, Josh has trouble with numbers. He can't add up. It's not a $50 billion project, it's a $36 billion project.
I can take you through the numbers
the reason we're
if you want
here
to discuss
today,
them.
The reason we're here today is
Let's
that
add them
the
up.
Libs don't support the NBN, the biggest piece of nation building in the country's history,
support
a significant
broadband.
piece of broadband infrastructure to take broadband, fast, reliable, affordable broadband into every home and business in Australia. The importance of the bills is to ensure that we get uniform wholesale pricing wherever you are, whoever you are in Australia. You will get a uniform price from your from the wholesale provider NBN. So that is going to ensure that if you're in regional Australia or if you're in the capital city, or if you're in an outer area such as myself, you know that the person retailing your broadband services to you is going to be getting their NBN services, their broadband services from the NBN Co at the same price as their competitors wherever they're providing from. So it's providing universal access pricing, and that is an important thing. And I'd have thought it's an important thing that the National Party members should have been out there supporting as well, because for the first time, they are going to get fast, reliable, affordable broadband into their homes and their businesses.
Well, that is a debate that is going on in the Parliament, and for our viewers, if you'd like to watch that, you can see it on channel 648 on APAC. Thank you both for your insights this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
Great
Ashleigh.
to be with you.
Coming up.